Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Eden Road podcast. We're fresh off the back of our 3-0 trouncing of Fulham last weekend. And that's what we're going to be talking about in today's episode, as well as some questions from the GPG and a quick look ahead to Palace at home this weekend. Before we get into that, guys, remember, if you haven't listened to the podcast before, please give us a follow on our social channels. That's at the Eden Road on Twitter and at Eden Road Pod on our new Instagram account. Joining me today to chat about all the things mentioned at the top of the show is Clayton. Clayton, how are we, mate?
Good as always, even better after the 3-0 trouncing, as you said.
Yes, exactly that. And also joining us after a fairly long time off the pod is Callum. Callum, lovely to have you back on the pod, mate. It's been good to see you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me back, everyone. How's everyone doing?
All good, mate. All good. So before we get going, it actually was alerted to me by Clayton that the first time we had you on the pod, we didn't actually get you to tell us your funniest Brentford story. So I've told you to come prepped with your funniest Brentford story today. So I'll let you take it away, mate.
I have. Okay, so Southampton away in 2013, I think it was, 2012, 2013. We went there and won 2-0. Now, I was mascot that day, funny enough, actually, at St Mary's. What I had to do was go and score with the mascot. You see it sometimes at Brentford, in the goal. Of course, I made myself look like a complete fool. Fell over. I did score, but fell completely on my arse. And then they said, go and celebrate in front of the fans. So what do I go and do? Go and do exactly the same thing, fall over right in front of the fans, make myself look like a complete fool. So funniest moment supporting Brentford was, yes, me being a mascot, slipping on my arse in front of about 30,000 people, and yes, my celebration after. So that will be my funniest moment supporting Brentford.
How old were you when you were the mascot, Callum?
Oh, bloody hell, that was 15 odd years. It was, yeah. So it would be
About 10.
Yeah, about 10 years old. Yeah, about 10 years old.
I've been a mascot of Brentford before, and I always came prepared, full kit wanker. I was in the football boots, the socks, everything. There was no way I was slipping. Were you just wearing trainers?
No, I was wearing football boots, but I tell you, clearly,
that's even worse then.
The suspense, yeah, quite literally, the suspense of, and probably just the whole thing of playing in front of, taking a penalty in front of 30,000 people. It was December. It was a cold December day. I remember very well. And clearly the pressure of wearing my Brentford kit and taking a penalty in front of 30,000 people was just too much for me. So yes, and I made myself look like a complete fool. They said, come in your full away kit. So what do when I'm walking out with Kevin O'Connor? I've got my full kit on and a pair of red socks. And I remember someone I think it was Potter actually that day, funny enough, came up to me and said, the kit man got the wrong kit for someone, so yeah, it was a funny day. We got the result 2-0, so that was very good. And yes, that's my funny moment. So.
Well, at least we won the game. At least it wasn't just complete misery for you falling over on the pitch. As long as we won the game, that's the important thing.
We did.
Anyway, we'll get into the Fulham game. Callum, I'll come to you first, mate. Seeing it's your first time back on the pod, how'd you find Saturday? Good day.
Yeah, great day all around. I mean, I think we got off to a bit of a slow start. Fulham, we were very patient with Fulham. They passed the ball around pretty well. Had a lot of the ball. I think I looked at the statistics in the first 40 minutes, and they had at least 100, 150 more passes than what we had. So we had to be patient, and we had to wait for our chance, and that's exactly what we got. So from there, we look great. We controlled the game after that, but we just had to be patient, and that's what we did well. And we took our chances when they came. So good job all round.
Yeah, 100% agree. Let's go through goal by goal. Wissa took his one very well, showed a lot of composure to just kind of keep cool, take it around the keeper and slot it in between the gap and the goal. Clayton, is your opinion of Wissa starting to change? That's the important question.
I'm considering him in my team for FPL game week 3 coming up. So I think that speaks volumes. I take my FPL very seriously. So I don't. Right, to stay on trend, I actually don't think he's set the world alight the first two games of the season. But he's always in the right position, and if it's as a striker, if he scores the goal once a game, I'm a happy man. So yeah, he's going up in my books, Mike.
Yeah, 100%. I've already transferred him in. I had Mbumo to start with, but with him getting returns game week 1 and game week 2, he's already in the team. Callum, thoughts on the penalty for 2-0 kind of relates to a question we got off the GPG. Detours. You said we've won 2 penalties so far, 20% of last season's total, both of which have been described by pundits as wrong decisions or very soft. Do you think we're going down more easily in the box, and are we becoming masters of the dark arts?
I don't think so. I feel that there was a touch from Tim Ream on the back of Wissa as he's about to take a shot on goal. Of course, typically one of the obviously the pundits was a former Fulham player, so of course he would come out and say a few things, wouldn't he? Let's be honest. And he's been, his team's been beaten 3-0 by one of their main rivals, so of course he's going to have a few words to say about it. But no, I feel the one last week against Tottenham, I think, was a blatant penalty on Jensen, and then of course this one as well with Wissa. I think again, look, with any touch, I think the player has any right to go down, and he is about to have a shot on goal. So I think it is a penalty, regardless of what pundits say. Danny Murphy, if you want to come on and say something different, then please feel free. But look, the fact of the matter was, it's a penalty. We scored. End of. Job done. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I'm kind of split, to be honest. I think it was very, very soft. Going back to the point about us being better masters of the dark arts, if anyone remembers Will coming on the podcast in its very early days, he hasn't been back since, but he did say when we went on that run of games, Clayton, when we were talking about not being able to put teams to the sword, he said that we need to kind of buy into these kind of tactics of time wasting, going down when obviously you could carry on, but going down when you can. Did you kind of feel like we do get a lot of penalties, Brentford? We really do. I remember last season, Ivan Toney had loads. We've already got 2 so far. What did you make of that? Is it kind of can you see that there might be some kind of instruction from the coaching staff saying if you feel a touch in the box, go down, because these days you'll get it?
I think that's just sensible, isn't it? If you're playing the modern game of football, where minimal contact is a penalty, then if you're not doing it and everyone else is doing it, you're putting yourself at a disadvantage. I think with the penalty incident on Saturday, I think it's a penalty, but if it's the other way around, and
we're
that's
raging.
Yeah, you're fuming. Yeah. But I've watched the replay so many times. I just can't figure out if he's actually off balance already, and then he gets pushed over, or he's about to take the shot, and then he gets kind of taken out by Ream, or the contact kind of sends him over. Because I've seen a few people speaking that he basically, even if Ream wasn't there, he'd basically have just fallen over the same way and he'd just kicked the air. But I really can't make my mind up about it. I think it's one of those decisions where it's not going to get turned over by VAR, but if it was given the other way, it wouldn't have been turned over either.
That is a good point. That is a very good point. I was just going to touch upon that, because I've only ever seen one penalty given from VAR, particularly it was us at Bournemouth last year. I don't know if you remember, and it's been then overturned by the referee, the on-field referee, after obviously being advised to go and look at it. So I feel referees are. It's a bit difficult when VAR is involved. They're not going to realistically, they're not going to overturn the decision. I don't think, personally, 9 times out of 10, especially when the referee has given the penalty. But who knows? I mean, look, he had every right to go down. We got the pen. Ream got sent off. Helped us out massively. So good job all round, I'd say.
Yeah. Like you said, we scored the pen. He gave the pen. Brian adds a third towards the end of the game. Clayton, we said on the last pod that his performance against Spurs last week could be a sign of things to come for Brian for the rest of the season. Another 2 goals to his name and another really good performance. I know it's difficult to say after 2 games, but how high, if I had to put the question to you, how high would you say Brian's ceiling is this year? Because based on those 2 performances, there's this whole kind of narrative that who's going to step up to the plate in Tony's absence. Based on the 2 performances that Brian's given, looks like he's the man at the moment.
Like double digits goals and assists, I think.
Yeah.
Not combined each. The way it started is the figures he's on his way, right? Mine's the assists. It's 2 penalties and it's happened, but you've got to put the penalties away, and you've got to be in the right place to score. That's happened. Mm-hmm. And I think we said it before Tony went away. It's the time for Brian to shine, and he's done it so far, so we can only back him. So yeah, I think there's no reason him being the main man going forward that he couldn't reach that target.
It's kind of weird that Tony going has brought out this kind of, I say this that he's only been 2 games, but if he does go on to get double digits for goals and assists, it would be kind of a weird idea to feel like what needed to happen for him to go to that next level we're always talking about is for Tony to go. Let me present you with a hypothetical, Callum. What happens when Tony comes back? Hypothetical situation, right? We're in about the same position as we were last year. We're starting to gain momentum. We're looking at the European places. Tony comes back in. does he go straight in your starting 11 if all's good? Say we're a little bit higher actually. Say we're sixth or seventh, and we're in good form, and Tony comes back in. Does he go straight back into the team?
I feel he has to go back into the team, to be honest with you. I feel that he offers us something different for what we obviously don't have at the moment. And I feel, regardless of what's gone off, off the field, you've got a striker there who's gone and scored the amount of goals that he has. So you've got to put him back in. The only issue which we will have is obviously, will he be match fit? That's where you got to look at it and say, okay, possibly you might see him come off the bench for the first few games, but otherwise I'd say you've got to put him in straight away, 100%. But then we got a dilemma of who takes the penalties. So Mbuemo, he ain't missed one yet, has he? So it's
Tony takes the penalties. Callum don't.
Tony's got to take them. Just a word on beating Fulham, Callum. We spoke about it on the last pod. These games do mean a little bit more to the fans than regular matches. When we go and do our rivals in 3-0 in their own backyard, it's close enough to the best start to a season you could ask for, yeah?
Massively. I was dreading actually going to Fulham. Very similar time to last year, actually, when we played them in the second away game of the season. And that was probably the best Fulham team I think I've seen for a long time. I don't think they deserved to win the game when they played us last year, but they played a very good game. So, of course, I was concerned. But to go there to put in such a performance like we did, and bearing in mind we didn't concede either, which not many teams did last season. And you look at the players of caliber they had players like Willian coming off the bench. Other players, they had Calvin Bassey, they've just signed. He was playing from Ajax. He just played the Champions League. They had some very, very good players, and we went there, defeated them with ease, and we could have had more goals. That's the thing. So it only gives us more confidence. So hopefully, we got a big game on Saturday. We can take that on the momentum and go and put exactly the same performance in another London derby. So fingers crossed. Why not?
Hope so. It's a different story when it comes to Palace, but we'll get on. We'll get onto that a little bit later. Any more you want to touch on for Fulham? I know me and Clayton were just talking off camera, and we said when we win 3-0, that there's not actually that much to talk about because there's not many points of contention. But if there's anything you did want to chat about, Clayton, anything else?
I think my pub chat after the game was that it was just such a convincing win.
Yeah,
they had a couple of chances at the crossbar. So that was about it. Maybe one other. Like Callum says, we had a couple other chances, which could have gone our way in another day. Yes, the penalty and the red card flipped it, but we just looked very convincing. I think across the board there wasn't a bad performance. I think everyone played well. So yeah, very, very happy with the Saturday afternoon in West London.
Callum, you echoing that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I would touch upon Fulham and say possibly they could be in a bit of trouble this year, I would say, actually. I mean, they did go and pick up a win at Everton. It's true, because you look at it and you say, I touched upon what I said earlier about the possession, what they had on Saturday, but they didn't turn it into any, very good chances, obviously, in the box. Apart from that one chance from Bobby Reid, obviously outside the box, hitting the crossbar, realistically, we weren't troubled. We weren't troubled at all. Even Willian, when he came off the bench, didn't create anything. So Fulham, really, now they've lost Mitrovic, who was their big main striker last season. If they don't invest in another player to go and replace him, they haven't got anyone. They haven't got. No. They've signed Jimenez, 2.5 million. Realistically, he's been in and out of the Wolves team previously. He isn't going to really do very much, I don't think. Vinicius hasn't done much. So really, if they don't sign anyone, they're going to struggle this year. They are going to struggle. So, but wait and see on that one. We'll wait and see.
Just before we move on to the Tony talk, I'll ask this question now. It's from Wise OB on the GPG, more of a Fulham-based question. He said, did Silva think he would be moving to a more lucrative post and as a result didn't give much attention to his squad? I know they were missing 2 or 3 names in their starting lineup, but they don't appear to have much squad depth whilst our subs were quality. I think it rings so true. I was looking at their lineup and I know Jimenez is supposed to be this kind of big marquee signing, but he hasn't scored a Premier League goal in ages. I know Willian's a kind of marquee signing as well, but is not the type that you would expect to go and kick on from a season. We know what the Premier League's like. If you're not sort of strengthening in the key positions, then you're going to get left behind. And they've now sold Mitrovic for a club record fee. So it'd be interesting to see how they spend it. But if they don't spend it well, honestly, I said it before the season started. They were overperforming their XG by so much last year. I really think they could be in trouble this year, and I hope they're going to be in trouble this year to cap that off. I can attest to the nervousness you said before the game as well, Callum. I definitely had more than I should have had to drink before the game. I was struggling to kind of piece the game back together when I was producing this episode. But anyway, we'll talk about Ivan Toney, because I feel like we need to after the big podcast that got released, Diary of a CEO this week. For anyone that hasn't seen it, fairly uneventful, I think you could say, but there was a few kind of talking points of contention. Callum, did you manage to listen to a little bit of it?
I listened to a bit of it where he talked about obviously part of his old career and obviously a bit what's happened of late, obviously with the the betting scenario. So I mean, it was a very interesting podcast. Definitely go and have a listen. I mean, it's a long one, it's about an hour and 40 minutes, but no, definitely go and have a listen. It is very in depth, so well worth, I'd say, having a listen. That's a Brentford.
Yeah, I mean, I when the news about Tony broke, when he officially got banned, I actually wrote an article in defence of him from some of the media outlets that were kind of lambasting him, saying that he's a match fixer, when that's not true, and they were just doing kind of clickbait headlines. But to be honest, the podcast did annoy me a little bit. I mean, there's points at which he kind of says that he didn't know that he wasn't allowed to bet on football, when that cannot be true. There is no way in which a professional footballer wouldn't know that they're not allowed to bet on football. I remember when we had Jonathan Douglas on the podcast, I asked them the same question, if you remember, Clayton. I said, what do you get told about betting rules before the start of the season? They said, you're not allowed to bet on football, period. And I've listened to a few videos online, and managers kind of saying the same thing. There's also a point in the interview where Stephen Bartlett, the guy that's interviewing him, says, in the FA report, they said that you lied in the first interview, said that you didn't do any bets or you haven't done any betting on football. And he said, I wasn't lying, I just can't remember. And I was just like, it's getting hard to defend at this point. And then the interview kind of rounds off with him twerking for a move to another club. So as much as I tried to defend Tony at the start, and I will back him, but some of the stuff that he said in the podcast, I didn't entirely agree with. And that's the main takeaways I took from it. Callum, you're looking like you want to...
Well, the only problem I would say is now usually when maybe his agent or something probably would have vetted these questions. Now, you don't know whether if he would have had a list of possibly what these questions were going to be before going into this discussion, this vlog. Now, obviously, if it was, then possibly there may be some questions to ask here, possibly talking so openly about obviously the fact that he didn't know that betting, obviously, as a player, he thought he could do it when realistically he shouldn't, and obviously there would be sanctions coming from that, and also obviously talking very openly about obviously a possible move as well. So again, probably Brentford wouldn't want him going again, talking too much into that, especially there has been rumours in the past saying that he has been linked with clubs like Chelsea and Arsenal and so forth. So it depends really, I think, has he been informed about these questions prior to going into this vlog? If he has, then I think it was an interesting vlog, but probably he shouldn't have answered half the stuff that he did. And if he hasn't, then I feel maybe he didn't like being put under the kind of the questions that he did possibly, but he could have turned them down at that point and said, "I'm not answering them." So,
what I will say about it is that he seems like a very determined character, and I've heard him kind of say it before on his social media post when he's saying, I'm going to come back a different player altogether. So I don't doubt that he's got it in him to kind of come back from this. The only thing that was just a little bit of a gripe was just some of the things that he said. I just think if you're going to go and you're going to do this, you need to know what kind of questions you're going to get, and you need to prepare better answers that people won't just see through straight away. Because I feel like if you look at all the comments under the podcast, there's just fans of the podcast that are listening to it for the first time, probably not too clued into Tony. Whereas if you look at the kind of wider footballing reaction, everyone's kind of saying he's leading you down the garden path with this kind of, I don't remember, or I didn't know that we couldn't bet on football. But anyway, too much talk on Tony. We don't have him until January, so we can start talking about him again when he comes back. We've got a few questions from the GPG. Question from SWR22. Has the first two games demonstrated that we are not lacking a backup for Tony, and that we should not do anything rash in the transfer window? Now, this question actually caused quite a lot of debate on the GPG thread, with some people still saying we need another option up top. and others saying that performances we put in over the past 2 games will be fine without any reinforcements. Clayton, we've spoken about it in the first 2 games. I still think we need another, maybe not a like-for-like striker because we don't want to spend loads of money, but a different element to our attacking sort of output. What do you think?
I'm going to be boring and give you the same answer I gave you last week, which is yes, we do. But whoever, the top 5, top 3 targets they've identified that can play in that, role that gives you something different as much as, Chris was off the market now, right? Because he just signed for Forest. But yeah, they're just, obviously, we know how Brentford does business. If they're not there for the right price and not available, then we'll wait. So, yeah, I think we do ideally want to be able to attack in more than one way. And obviously, Tony always let us do that. But I think you can, and I'm probably stealing from your script here, but we had another update from Fabrizio, although he's been a bit ropey this summer. So who knows if this is true.
So all the interactions with the GPG.
The community notes that Elon Musk's been after Fabrizio on Twitter this year has been out a few times. But obviously we've got Gonzalez from Fiorentina, apparently renewed bid. So yeah, I mean that kind of shows that's not us spending 40 million on a target man or someone that can hold the ball up. That's someone that can play off the left or off the right. So I think that kind of is a testament to it, right? It's not that big number 9. It's more players that can play in kind of across the front 3.
Yeah, and I did the thing that we all do when we sign a new player and go look at some highlight packages. He actually seems like he's really good in the air. Lots of goals with his head, good at arriving late into the box. So like Sharda almost, he's got that kind of jumping ability. But he has a kind of Mahrez type build in the way that he kind of lures players in and then drops the shoulder and goes. But I just think the weirdest thing about this whole thing is that Brentford are bidding €43 million package for a Fiorentina player. Like, it's absolutely nuts, Callum.
Bonkers. It's bonkers. I mean, I look at the times when we were bringing in players on loan, that we hadn't heard of previously in the League 1, League 2 days, scraping around, signing players for next to nothing, effectively, because simply we couldn't afford anything, major. But it's exciting. It is exciting. I mean, touching back on that question, I feel that the main problem we have here is obviously we're getting into the last week of the transfer window. Now, if anyone is wanting to sell a striker, they're going to want big money, more than what they've been talking about for the last 2 months. So that's number one thing we've got to look at. And as we've Clayton said, Brentford won't spend big or more than what the market value is or what they think. So, I mean, the other thing we've got to look at, I think we should sign someone personally if it is right. I feel the one thing we've been lucky with so far is our striking options haven't got injured. Now, what do we do if someone gets injured? We could be short. We could put Keane Lewis Potter possibly up front. I've been impressed with him, but is he a striker? Possibly, I don't know. Sharda is still to kind of impress me as much as I think he could do up front. I think he's more of a winger. So I think we should go and sign someone. But again, the price has to be right. So we'll have to wait and see. But I think it's going to be an exciting end to the window. Obviously, we're looking at Gonzalez. I don't know much about him, to be honest with you. So you probably might know a bit more than me. But I think if we sign him, how big it will be for us as a club. I mean, not because of the kind of caliber and the amount of money we're spending, but also someone, who has played for Argentina and kind of the following that's going to bring with it as well.
Yeah.
You've looked at other clubs when they brought in players. I'm going to look at Matoma, for example, for Brighton. Kind of the following that's brought from bringing someone from that country. It's only, and maybe Ericsson for us. When you saw when we signed Ericsson, kind of the caliber of people who were interested in the club ever so sudden because you just brought in one player. So, and the South Americans are big on their football. So if we sign someone like that, it's only going to grow the club even more. So if we can get him, that'd be great. That would be great.
I think you raise a good point about us not having had any injuries to the front 3 as of yet, and it might actually be a better kind of solution and strategy to go for another kind of winger that could interchange between those top 3 positions instead of going for that kind of like-for-like target man like Tony is. The clubs are kind of in a difficult position because if they try and do go for that, they're going to have to spend a lot of money, and Ivan Toney's going to be back in January anyway, so it's kind of just pissing money up the wall. as a famous Cliff Crown once said. But as getting getting another kind of winger in, so that we've got 3 up top plus a sub plus another one that can come in and kind of cover all 3 of those positions would be a good option. We'll go on to the next one. Also, like bringing in someone that's a teammate of Lionel Messi. Like, what is going on? Absolutely.
It's mad, isn't it?
I can see that somehow, but it's the fee more that's just completely shocking.
But this is what you. I mean, I looked at a post earlier on Twitter actually, and someone actually, I'm not sure who it is, but actually questioned the recruitment team bringing in players like that. But actually, if you look at some of the signings that are going on at the moment, I personally don't think that. So if you work out the conversion, it's probably about 36, 37 million. For someone who's gone and played for Argentina, for someone who has done very well in Serie A as well, from what I've heard, I don't think 37 million is particularly that big of a transfer fee. Some may say otherwise, but you look at how big Chelsea are paying on some of their players and the transfers at the moment. 37 million for a player of that caliber, I don't think is a lot of money. It sounds it for Brentford, but we're growing. We're going to have to, and the market is that big at the moment. You're going to have to spend money like that. So I think it's well worth doing. So we'll see.
Callum, was that the tweet I replied to?
That Callum, was the tweet I believe you replied to. Yes, I believe
it was replied to tweets.
I don't know why. I don't know why they were saying it was the recruitment. I think listen, if you look at, as I said earlier, the kind of player he is, where he's coming from, what he's done, £37 million is not a lot of money in my opinion. So crack on. But do Fiorentina want to sell realistically? That's the thing. They're saying no, but how much? There is always a price for a player. We've seen that. If we can match it, who knows what can happen? So fingers crossed.
Yeah, I think it's good. It's good that it shows the ambition of the owners if we're willing to go out and spend this money on players. I also wouldn't be surprised if Todd Boehly brings out the checkbook and kind of sweeps the transfer off us just on deadline day. But anyway, we'll go on to Philly Bees fan asking why we always draw against Palace and what we need to do differently to get the win. I think this is an interesting one because I watched the Palace game against Arsenal on Monday night, and I didn't think they looked too well. I know Arsenal were kind of dominant in terms of possession, but I thought the way Palace defended was actually really key. And obviously after the red card, they were pushing on for an equaliser. I think if they'd had another 10 minutes in the game, they probably would have got it. But especially in that midfield, Arsenal didn't have too much space for their tacticians to kind of operate in. Callum, what do you think? How do we beat Palace on Saturday? Because so far it's 4 draws from 4 in the Premier League, and all of them have been absolute stinkers.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think if you look at how they play away from home, from what I've seen, compared to what they play at home. Now, away they do like to waste time quite often. So from what I've seen previously against us, obviously personally I feel referee has to be on top of the game for starters. If that's something they're going to do, then we've seen it already with us and on Monday night involving Palace and Arsenal, time wasting. Get those cards out. That will then stop that, obviously, hopefully. So. Obviously, we've got to go and score an early goal, I feel, as well, because obviously that then will mean they've then got to come at us and obviously take their opportunities when they come. So score an early goal, make sure we're on top of them as well. I mean, if they're wasting time, let the referee know about it. Make it feel like the referee's got to give him a yellow card. That's what I feel. We've got to score an early goal and make sure the referee is on top of the game and stopping any time wasting that happens.
Clayton, do you think it's going to be much different to the 4 times we played them before? Because honestly, looking at those 2 games that they played against Sheffield United and Arsenal, it just kind of seems like the same kind of resolute. They've got good centre halves. They've got creative players that can hurt you as well. We'll get onto Eze when we actually do the Palace preview. But how do you think Saturday's going to go?
I'm not sure. But they're just a good team. I think we just match up quite well. I think that's wise. Yeah. And it's like, if you're both... in theory, you probably both look at the strength of both teams. You're both mid-table sides. You're both going to finish between 15th and 9th. Probably a bit high for Palace, but when you kind of match up, I feel like from both sets of staff, maybe in the fans, you're like, you know what, you take a point. But at home, 100%, we would love to take 3 or 6 points from the next 2 home games. But yeah, I think we just match up well. I think, like you said, they've got extremely good and underrated centre-back pairing with Gay and Anderson. And what stops them kicking on is kind of they lack quality and depth in certain positions, but then they make up for it in other places. Not particularly strong kind of full-back area. Don't really have a proper striker. I think they'll probably be better off without Zaha. I think he's trying to make it a one-man show for too long. But yeah, players like Eze and Elise just like pure class, and so I think we just match up really well. So hopefully we'll walk them off the park on Saturday.
A few curtains around Kevin Sharda this week. Moby is asking if him being used as an inverted winger will be underexploiting his most obvious strength, and another on Twitter from That's BS asking if it would be best to use Sharda as a sub against tired defenders. Callum, what did you... I know you said at the top of the show, Clayton, you said that everyone played a blinder on Saturday. If I was to single out one player that didn't maybe have the best game, I thought it was Kevin Sharda, to be fair. Callum, what do you think? Are we using him in the wrong way, or is he better as a sub to come on?
I mean, I feel personally at the moment, I think we should carry on having him as the front individual up front. You look at, yes, he probably wasn't the best player on the park on Saturday, but he still influenced the game. You've got to take that into account. He set up Wissers. Obviously we got the penalty, so he set up with the header. There was a few opportunities as well where he did try and take the defence on in some way or another. He's very good in the air, so I feel don't change him. Keep him as it is. I don't see a reason. The only thing that will do is obviously knock his confidence, and we spent a lot of money on him. So give him a chance. And I still believe when he gets that goal, he will kick on.
Yeah.
I said that last season. We're still waiting for it. He had a chance on Saturday where he just didn't get his foot in, and he would have scored. Give him a chance. He will take it. But no, I wouldn't say he was the best performance on Saturday. But I feel that he should continue to play up front in the position he's playing and not to change it.
Yeah, no, I agree. Did anyone see Jay's tweet about him and Rico Henry apparently having an argument before the second goal? I didn't actually see that on the pitch. Did either of you?
No. So what happened was it was to do with the throw-in. Actually, funny enough, on the side on the far side from where we were. Now, obviously, Henry was trying to get Sharda to run in behind with a quick throw-in, for which obviously he wasn't doing, and I believe Henry then got booked. Actually, funny enough, yes, that's exactly what happened. And obviously, he wasn't happy with, he saw an opportunity there to obviously, to take a quick throw-in, get Sharda running against, a defence which was out of position at the time. Obviously, he was frustrated, got booked in the process for wasting time. So that is where I believe it came from. I didn't see any other moments, obviously, on Saturday. But listen, I think they're such a tight group. We rarely see stuff like that, actually. So it is quite rare. But no, I imagine that was probably the incident. So.
Yeah, you referenced a tight group. That reminds me, there are two podcasts out at the moment which everyone should go and check out. Obviously, the Access All Areas Brentford one with Jay is really good, but probably more for people who aren't so attuned to the Brentford story, if you will. Definitely made for a wider audience. But there is a review on Tifo Football that I think was Seb Stafford Bloor. I think he had Jay on, and they talked about the whole recruitment process in more depth. So I'd definitely go and recommend our listeners to go and check that out, because I thought it was fantastic. We'll get back to the question. We've got that's BS again asking on Twitter if Collins did enough to claim the second centre-back position ahead of me. This is a tricky one, because obviously Collins has come in with this big price tag, record fee, and I think he's actually been really, really, really good in both games. Comfortable on the ball, not afraid to take a risk with long balls, comfortable in both halves, and he's good defensively as well with that tackle on Saturday that we saw that was posted by the club. Clayton, what are you thinking? Because in my head, I think Ben Mee was so good last year, he was. But if we were going to use him, maybe as a more senior player, to kind of use him as a utility player, as opposed to starting week in, week out. Honestly, I would think that with the calibre of Collins' performance in the first two games, I don't think you can really drop him.
Yeah, no, completely agree. I think I said it on Saturday. Especially another thing that works in Collins' advantage just as well, that he's played so good in the first two fixtures, is the fact that he's right-footed. So when you play that back four, you can play Pinnock on the left and him on the right. And it's kind of got a nice balance. Not that it really made too much of a difference having two left-footed centre-backs when we played a flat before with me in there back end of last season. But I think it would be very harsh on Collins if kind of Ben Mee, lacking match fitness, came back into the squad and replaced him straight away. So yeah, completely agree, Mike.
Any thoughts, Callum?
No, I completely agree. I feel, as much as I hate to say it, realistically, a player who is playing as well as he is at the moment, I touched upon it on Twitter on Saturday, and I said just how well he's got into the group. He and how defensive minded, how well he is on the ball. His heading abilities, everything is second to none. So can you drop someone like that? No, I don't think you can. But the problem is, brings so much to the team. You listen to him off the pitch. He's such a good club person, and how he is with Pinnock, we saw that last season. It's a difficult one. It's actually a very good question, but I feel that you can't drop him unless we go through a barren spell where realistically he's not playing well, which I don't think will happen. Unfortunately, will have to stick to the bench unless we play a back five, which we have seen previously, and then you can see him possibly slot in with three centre backs, and then two wing backs. But at the moment, I'd keep it as it is. Really, I would say you can't change it. You can't change it.
Kind of leads me into the next question. We've got Richard McDougall asking what Aya's best possession is. Looks like he has to play in a back three, so won't start when we're in a four. So we've got two. Obviously, competition for places is what you want, but it's a weird one with Aya as well because he's come with a big price tag. When he's played, we've kind of seen sort of little snippets of how good he can be, but at times he has looked a little bit wobbly. He did get a nice little cameo and an assist on Saturday. Clayton, what do you think his best position is? Obviously, I don't think he sticks in that four, so I agree with the guy who's asking the question. But like we said, if Ben Mee's on the bench, is he the better option as a third centre-back? And sort of who's going in the middle on each side? Obviously, Pinnock's a stalwart. He's got to be in there. What do you think?
I think if everyone's fit when we go to Newcastle in a couple of weeks, we play back five to try and not leak 5 goals this time. You play Ben Mee or even Pinnock in the middle with the other one playing on the left and then Collins on the right. But going back to Aya, I think we've seen a lot of his best glimpses offensively, as weird as that to say, for a centre-back. So his position, is that right-sided centre-back in the back three, which he played on the left against Spurs, which I think I mentioned, which I think is part of the reason why I looked so uncomfortable at points. In an ideal world, he'd probably play there. But I think also on a flat four, he could play right back quite comfortably. He did it a bit when we had some injuries there in our first season. Because I think when he joined Celtic, he was a centre mid. They converted him to centre back, and he's definitely very comfortable going forward. It's not the first time I've seen him put it back in the box for an assist, echoing on Saturday.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's nice to have all this competition. I think in terms of the back line, I think we're pretty sorted in terms of not needing to bring anyone in. We've looked pretty solid in the first 2 games. I know we needed to work on that set piece in the Tottenham game, but against Fulham, like you said, pretty much, there were no clear-cut chances that we gave away. Obviously, Bobby Reid had that chance from outside the box that hit the bar. But in terms of defensively, and I think obviously Wissa and Bumo will get a lot of credit for this, for however long we go on this, for however long we play well. If they're both scoring the goals, they're going to get the credit. But I really think what people who don't watch Brentford week in, week out won't realise is that this kind of, the success that we're having now is due to a spine of the team that's been at Brentford since the Championship. I mean, players like Christian Norgard, Ethan Pinnock, Frika Henry, they've all been here for that long, and they've all contributed to a kind of defensive solidity that we haven't actually seen in a while. Obviously, I hope we don't go to Newcastle and leak 5 goals because that was terrible. But it's good. It's good to have that many defenders at the club, that many high level defenders as well. It's people like Zanka, people like me, Pinnock, Collins. We've got so many defenders. So if we are going to make any more signings this summer, I don't think we need any in defence, which is nice to see. That's it for the questions. I do have to shout out one guy on the GPG, VC Maz, who suggested after my naming of the GPG thread that I posted the questions to, which was Fulham a shite, he suggested that we rename QPR to a rancid infested testicle on the ball sack of Acton. And I think that's a great name for QPR. So we'll copyright that. And next time we beat QPR, that'll be the thread. A rancid infested testicle on the ball sack of Acton. Otherwise known as QPR. Yeah, really does. We'll go on to Palace then. 4 draws, like I mentioned already. 4 draws in all of our Premier League fixtures against Palace. They've won once, lost once, 1-0 both times. We kind of already answered this question. I was going to ask you, Clayton, if we're expecting the same sort of game. It's going to be. I think it's going to be tight. To be honest, I don't see either side kind of pulling away. Do we know if Elise is going to be fit for that game? Because he hasn't played in the last 2, has he? Is he still injured? We're not sure.
Not sure.
Well, I think the danger man is definitely Eze in terms of attacking output. I was having a look at his stats earlier, and he's got like the most shots, or he's been directly involved in the most shots out of any other attacking player this season. And he's yet to open his account. So you could say that he's due for a goal or an assist. Callum, do you rate Eze? Are you scared about him coming to Brentford on Saturday?
Very much so, especially with his history. I think I think he's a player with huge potential, and he has proved that in the past as well. So, but obviously, Crystal Palace rely on him quite a lot. I feel actually, so it's a lot of pressure on him. But no, massively, I feel. Obviously, I imagine he will play. We've really got to see him as the key player in the squad. So yes, absolutely, kind of try and make sure he isn't involved in the game too much. Because I remember, I think he played last season against us, didn't he? Was it?
Yeah.
Was it Eze that scored, or was it?
Yeah, he came on and scored with his
Yeah.
second touch or something.
Yeah, that's right. So this is we know what he can do. So we've got to make sure we utilise that threat and make sure he doesn't do that again. So, but no, I actually feel, having watched the game last night, again, I think Arsenal did have some opportunities. They had to be patient, and they took their chance when they got it, obviously with the penalty. So I actually feel this is going to be a weekend where we may actually go and score a few goals against Crystal Palace. Hodgson, his tactics can be a bit sometimes, defensive minded. I touched upon earlier, I feel that they may try and break the game up as much as possible. But I feel we could go and win this game 2 or 3-0 this weekend. I don't see a reason why not. It's probably slightly too confident, but I feel that with the momentum we've got at the moment, we can only kick on. And it's never an easy game in the Premier League, but I feel this is the kind of game where I think the team will relish. It's a good opportunity. We've now got 2 home games in a row. Mm-hmm. Let's go and get 6 points. I don't see a reason why we can't. We're on a great form coming off the back of last season as well. And obviously Match of the Day touch upon that. We are continuing this form which we had last season. Kick on, score some goals, give the fans a lot to cheer about as they always do, and let's go and get the 3 points.
Clayton, are you backing us to beat anyone at home in the league, regardless of whether it was this year or last year? I just think when we're at home, I used to kind of have the same feeling at Griffin Park when there was a big game and we knew it was a big game. Obviously not relating to the Palace game on Saturday, but just in terms of the season in general. Whenever there's a big game, the crowd gets up for it. And we do tend to, put in a few good performances. I can think of Arsenal as well, Man City at home last year. You backing us to beat most teams in the league at our best at home?
I do at our best, yes, but I do think sometimes we do play a bit subpar, especially in the first half.
Yeah.
When we play these kind of teams that we match up quite well, or maybe the stronger team. Usually get the result, but we have dropped points in the past. But no, there's something special about the G-Tech. It's the home fans, right? It's the atmosphere. That the bring. I was going to say, I won't be too confident against City, but we turned them over at the end of last season as well. So, Well, do you know what? If we do, I think Palace is one of the only teams in the Premier we haven't beaten. So,
yeah,
if we beat them on Saturday, then can't help but be confident against most teams at home.
Yeah, 100% agree, boys. I think that'd be a good place to round off the podcast. Unless there's anyone wants to talk about before Palace.
No, but I feel it'll be a good game on Saturday. I feel listen, let's get behind the team as I always say on the podcast. I feel some of these games, it is a London derby, but I feel when the big 6 aren't coming down to the G-Tech, sometimes the atmosphere lacks.
Yeah.
So let's get behind the team as much as we can. Let's turn this place into a cauldron, as they say on Sky Sports very, very often when they come down. The atmosphere is key. So let's get behind the team. Let's get the 3 points in the bag, and let's go home happy on Saturday. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Perfect. Nicely said, Callum. The Elam Road podcast will be back next week to go over the Palace game at the weekend and to preview Bournemouth the following week. Remember, guys, if you haven't listened to the podcast before, please leave a rating on our Spotify and YouTube channels and give us a follow on our socials. That's at the Elam Road on Twitter and at Elam Road Pod on Instagram. Thank you for listening, and we shall see you next week.
Cheers.
0